I was a really different kind of student. My portfolio of activities included a lot of things that was not a graduate student. And I did that in high school and college. I wrestled, for example. I also rode crew. And I did stuff. I even I danced, okay? And I danced ballet and modern and international Latin ballroom, competitive Latin ballroom. And so I might be able to still do that. Let me see if I can still do this. Let me see.
You're not going to appear.
Yeah, there we go. I'll still do that. Okay, so I had all these activities that I pursued. What I didn't know was that I was expected to drop them all and only give 100% of my life to the lab. Again, it's the figurative lab. And I was uncomfortable doing that. I was worried that all of a sudden I would no longer be all that I was. I'd have to be something else. And so I changed my personality, made it less gregarious, less socialized, and I just kind of became this hermit. It wasn't working out. And the fact that I was still on my feet and still knocking on doors, that told him something right away. But not only that, he had seen me. He'd had scientific conversations with me. So it helped that I was visible at conferences. It helped that I was speaking to other scientists about their work, about my work.
You had a network.
Yes, outside of the one that was tarnished. So I can tell you that in the end, what matters more than anything, it matters even more than how smart you are, is how strong and how deep is your ambition. Because no one ever said graduate school is going to be easy. No one even said that there's this trajectory you follow, and if you just do that, everything will be fine. Because graduate school, you have to have relationships with people who stand between you and the success of your career. It's got to work. It's got to be fertile. They've got to respect your intellect. And it's going to be hard work, yes. That's why you're doing it. You're not doing it because it's easy, you're doing it because it's hard. If you did it because it was easy, everybody would have done it. And then you'd have no distinction about what it is you were pursuing for yourself in this enterprise, this great enterprise we call research science. So while they were telling me to be the computer salesman, while I was being kicked out of graduate school, there was a point where I was in my parents' basement without an academic affiliation, something that I had and maybe even taken for granted my whole life, without a job. You know, how much lower can you get? You're kicked out of school, you don't know if you're going to get into another school. Your life's ambition. This is not just something that I discovered in college because astrophysics was early in the alphabet in the course catalog. You know, it was something that was deep within me, and I needed those reserves. I needed the support from my family. That was a subject that came up this morning. Support from loved ones. It's all part of the reserve of energy. And these are the challenges.
You have a huge appetite for being intellectually curious.
Oh, yeah.
Where did that come from?
Well, it is contained within any adult who has not grown up.
So you're still a big child.
I'm still a kid. And I think that's true for most, if not every single person who carries scientist as a title. Because what does a kid do? A kid turns over rocks and explores and pokes things, and it takes foresight for an adult to allow that, recognizing that these explorations that usually end up in stuff that's broken are actually experiments on the forces of nature that surround us. Kids don't worry about the weather. Oh, it's raining, let's go out and get wet. No, you'll get your clothes dirty. Oh, there's a mud puddle there, let me jump into it with 2 feet. No, everything is a no. Every time it's snowing outside, now I have to remind myself, but I do open my mouth and catch snowflakes in it. Just like kids. It's a reminder of what I don't want to lose as I get older. Because that is an inherent state of curiosity that I think we're born with.
Tell me about whether you think there ought to be a manned mission to Mars.
Well, I think that...
And what's the payoff?
The fact that some things are happening simultaneously. We've got a comet hitting Jupiter, making tremendous explosions. We've got we have some understanding of how the dinosaurs might have gone extinct.
Right.
And we know how to get off the planet. So here are dinosaurs with brains this big. Maybe if they knew better and they had some, if they were able to leave the planet, you bet they would have. And the fact that they're not here today and we know how to leave the planet. We know how to
have an active space program.
even have an active space program. That there's no excuse to not at least try to protect the human species from such a collision.
So is it clear that the astrophysics community thinks this is a terrific idea?
Well, it depends on allocation of resources, but if money's going to be spent on the space program anyway, which itself is a debatable issue, but if that's what you're going to do, then you can ask yourself, you redefine the word defense to be not defense of your borders, but defense of the whole species itself. And with that sort of incentive to colonize other planets, to participate in either space colonies or wherever else off of the Earth, so that if a comet comes our way, we've got the species will survive it. But for me, as an educator and as a scientist, what it tells me is that there really is an underserved curiosity in adults.
To spark that curiosity, he told us this is the most mind-altering picture ever taken, shot 46 years ago from Apollo 8 while orbiting the moon.
This was the first time any of us had seen Earth the way nature had intended, with oceans and land and clouds. So many of us had only ever seen Earth on a schoolroom globe, and so this is the birth of a cosmic perspective.
And that idea should change our world.
Back then, that idea did change our world. Earth Day was founded. Leaded gas was banned. DDT was banned. All of a sudden, people were thinking about Earth as a world, that we're all in it together. We're thinking we're exploring the moon, and we discovered the Earth for the first time. There is no such thing as planet Nimburu or whatever they say. It's just fiction. And they cite sources that cite NASA sources. They don't cite NASA. Check the websites, you'll see. And it's all related to the doomsday predictions of the year 2012. Yes, that's what you're getting at. That's behind your question, isn't it? Yes. 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 You want to know if the world is going to end on December 21st, 2012. Because the same website that tells you about Planet X, this secret planet that has a strongly elliptical orbit that will come into our zone in 2012 and knock Earth off its axis, combined with, on December 21st, 2012, that the center of the galaxy, the sun and the Earth will come into perfect alignment, and the excess gravity will then also tip Earth off its axis, and it'll be end of the world as we know it. This is what these web pages will tell you. Turns out, if you go to December 21st and look at the star charts, it's true. The center of the galaxy, the sun and the Earth will come into perfect alignment. It will. It's true. It's true. What the site does not tell you is that happens every year on December 21st. To major in physics and astrophysics was not the blackest thing one can come up think of doing, right? So what remained over the decades? Clearly we had expressed musical talent and other sort of artistic talent, but what remained? What remained was intellectual power, if you will. So if you don't have visible black scientists, then the word smart doesn't find itself into the black community as applied by others. And so then it becomes easier for the rest of the world to think that smarts isn't there at all. Upon realizing this to myself, I said, we can't afford for me to not be a scientist. If that's one of the last biases that prevails in society. So that if I'm a visible scientist contemplating the cosmos, and then you're driving up and there's someone wants to squeegee your windshield, and you're a wealthy white person, let's say, and you say, oh, these black people, it's all they can do. Yet you just saw me on television talking about explosions on the sun and whether the fate of the Earth depends on it. You're going to have to, I'd like to think that instead of saying, oh, all black people can't work, maybe you'll say, there are lost opportunities here. Imagine what the world could be if we were all as intellectually enfranchised as what had happened with Dr. Tyson.
Now his playground is the Hayden Planetarium.
The Milky Way is actually visible behind me here.
This is the planetarium that changed his life when he was just 9 years old.
You'd see the sky from your rooftop.
Well, from my roof in the Bronx, and I saw all dozen stars that are visible from there. On a good night, maybe 14 stars, and I come in here, and then they dim the lights, and I said, wow. And it was the universe.
When you walked out of this planetarium, I mean, were you a different person because you were overwhelmed by the experience?
You put your finger on it. I spent my entire life never knowing that such a sky existed. And then to be struck by it, to be starstruck by it. And after that day, I said, I want to learn more about it. That annoying question that adults always ask kids, what is it?
What do you want to do when you grow up?
What do you grow up? I would say astrophysicist. Yeah. And that pretty much shut everybody up in the room. The universe is so amazing and so limitless. And who wouldn't want to study the universe?
What was so amazing?
The endless frontier of it all. The vastness of it. The mystery of it.
But Tyson had to fight societal stereotypes to reach his goal. Because he is black, he said, teachers pushed him towards athletics, not astrophysics, which he called the path of most resistance.
When I needed to overcome the low expectations of others or the bias that would be expressed in one circumstance or another, I keep on keeping on. And I climb over the obstacle, go around it, dig under it, fly over it. That's what kept me going. Otherwise, I would have never been an astrophysicist.
At age 56, Tyson is still starstruck by both the sky and the planetarium that brought it to life.
Yeah, it depends on what there means to you, right?
Well,
there implies you're there and you're done. No. There is never there. There is, should be, always just out of reach. And then you are forever drawn to it. Always improving yourself, always learning, always writing, always researching, always acquiring, establishing deeper thoughts than you ever had the day before. So yes, there's a PhD that I ascended to, but that wasn't the there. The there is what's more beyond that. There's research, there's published papers, there's books, there's teaching, there's all of this. President Kennedy, when asked, why do we go to the moon, he responded, we choose to go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard. When I was in school, I wrestled, varsity. I wrestled not because it's easy, but because it was hard. And these challenges every day enabled me to ascend yet another rung on a ladder whose top, I don't know where the top was. It doesn't matter, but every rung you get to see more and more of what's behind you. And other problems undreamt of are revealed because now you have the power to solve them. And I don't care what branch of human thought the problem sits in. I happen to do the physical sciences, but like I said, sociology, psychology, nursing, medicine, anything. The hard problems leave you in a new place. So, we don't have it. The center of mass of particle physics is no longer in America, it's in Europe. That's the thing about science. Anybody can do it if you have the vision and the resources. The Large Hadron Collider is going to sample the states of matter that have never been sampled at the higher energies than have ever been sampled before. And the higher the energies you go, the closer back in time your cavity will look like the Big Bang. Okay, because the Big Bang was a time when the whole universe was small, under conditions of pressure and temperature that they're recreating inside this accelerator. Do you remember what the big fear was?
And still
the black hole.
Oh yeah,
apparently.
it's still out there.
Going to make a black hole, and it was going to eat the Earth. And it turns out we get bombarded by high-energy particles daily that dwarf the energies created in this. Nature is a much bigger particle accelerator than anything our hardware can produce. And these particles would have surely turned Earth into a black hole long ago. That's number one. Number two, I don't know if you checked this, but the week the LHC was turned on, that was the same week of Wall Street collapse. and the financial market collapsed. So I think the black hole went to Wall Street is what happened. Sucked all the money out of the economy.
For me, the most astonishing fact is that the molecules that comprise our body are traceable to the crucibles of the centers of stars that manufactured these elements from lighter versions of themselves and then exploded, scattering this enrichment across the galaxy into gas clouds that would later collapse to form next generation star systems. One of those star systems was ours. These atoms and molecules are in us because, in fact, the universe is in us. And we are not only figuratively, but literally stardust.